Hi, I'm Carl Qualls.
And I'm Alexander Syniec.
I'm professor of history here at Dickinson College.
And I'm a rising junior that's double majoring in history and sociology.
We just thought we'd give you a short overview of what we've been doing this summer. Before we get to that, I'd like to give a big thanks to Dickinson College Research and Development Committee and the Dickinson Humanities Advisory Committee for funding our collaboration this summer. So Alex, why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about the process of creating the videos we worked on?
Right, so we started off just brainstorming ideas of what these videos would be about, and we started out with just bullets of scripts and ideas, and then we drafted it out, and we started in our Media Basler Center, and we had a green screen, a camera, and a tripod, and we had to do a lot of playing around with lighting and positioning to kind of get a desired effect that we wanted. And then when we went into editing, it was about compiling images together that would help explain the script without busying it too much. And then we'd finally get down to our edited version of what we thought was a good summary of the Cold War or Marxism.
So just as an overview, so what we're trying to do is create a series of short, we might call them a video textbook or video tutorials to introduce students to some moments in European history in particular. We thought we'd do about 8 videos this summer. We ended up doing 9, which is great. We had to research, write, film, and edit all of them. And we didn't know coming in how long exactly that would take. So there's a learning process from the very beginning to the end where we've gotten pretty comfortable with the process we worked on. So what we're calling this is Time Capsules, Unearthing the Complexity of History. And the hope is that students in my courses this fall will be our first guinea pigs. They'll watch the videos, they'll fill out a series of surveys for me, and we'll see how we did. Did the students get it? Did it improve their learning? Are they prepared for classes in the way that I was hoping? So for Alex, can you talk about your role in the studio and also as a researcher and writer?
So I'm behind the camera, and it was kind of my job to make sure we're getting usable footage for the most part, and really playing around with how we used a green screen and filling in those holes. We had a lot of lighting technical issues, but it was learning, you know, are we using the big lights now? Are we shutting off certain lights to kind of adjust and make for usable footage later on? And then taking that raw film and going back and editing the bloops and kind of seeing what's going to fit, what's not going to fit, and timing down also the large video into smaller chunks. And kind of the way I did it when editing was looking at it as a giant slideshow almost, and in fragments and themes to help me as an editor, and then to hopefully help you as an audience to kind of see what this video is actually trying to teach you. As far as researcher and writer, luckily I got to kind of draft 2 of my own outlines, and that was very interesting, and looking for sources that had these materials that covered wide-ranging eras in time. It was not easy, but then compiling, okay, what's the most important thing you want people to know about Marxism or Romanticism? So it was a lot of taking huge chunks of information and getting it down to the nitty-gritty of what we want.
Good.
And I guess, what were you hoping to get out of this, and how do you know if it's going to be successful in a classroom?
Yeah, so what I was hoping to get out of this is a chance for students to get enough foundation to understand the secondary or primary sources that we're going to be working with in class. So I have to spend less time in front of the class lecturing, which I do when I have to, but I choose not to as much as possible. I'd much rather be getting down and doing some close reading and discussions of complex ideas and documents. So hopefully watching a roughly 10-minute video will allow the students to skip maybe an hour worth of textbook reading, and then we can focus more on the good secondary and primary sources rather than a tertiary source. So with that foundation, then I'm hoping that we'll be able to get deeper in each class period and in each course. So the students will emerge at the end of the semester with a much deeper knowledge of the particular things that we're talking about that semester. As far as whether we're successful or not, I'm developing a survey for the students that they will take after each class that's associated with the video. So they'll watch the video first, then we'll have a class period or periods associated with that. And then the students will have to take a short survey in which I'm asking them about their learning, how or if it improved their learning, their preparation. Also some things simply about the aesthetics of the video, because we were experimenting as a team with how to present material. And so this will allow us, if we choose to do this again, to hopefully do it better the second time around. And so we'll be looking at those surveys throughout the fall. And on my teaching blog, I'll be blogging about those results so all the viewers can follow at home on the success or lack thereof of our various videos. Can you talk about what you got out of this collaboration, right? Because this is a student-faculty collaboration that Dickinson College really supports and believes in. So I'm interested in what you think you got out of it in the short term and what you think you might get out of it for the long term.
Well, I think definitely the ability to use kind of more technical skills behind a computer and really digging into new programming. So we started off with a basic iMovie on the Apple computer and then moving into Final Cut Pro, as well as really having this creative outlet and you entrusting me in kind of taking some creative leeway in the videos and in making title pages and things of that nature. Definitely short-term effects that are going to flow into the long run, but definitely the collaboration between professor-student and really having a respectful way to release information and throw back ideas, I think that's priceless, and I think that's how we got down to some of our best ideas on how to do this.
Mm-hmm. So you can tell our viewers about how much did you work each week, and where did you work each week?
So this was an 8-week project, and I worked about 8 hours a day, and I would stay later depending on if we had a longer project or if I missed a day. And I worked in the media center in Basler in the basement in front of a computer. And then we also got to use their equipment as well as their studios for doing the footage.
So Aleks is putting in this summer 320 hours. Most of that time, unfortunately, is in the editing process,
yes.
Which takes a lot more time than anybody imagines. And she also did a lot, in addition to editing the video, she created a lot of things with InDesign and to some degree in Photoshop as well, trying to make some of the images pop out a little bit more in the videos and making the title sequence and things like that. So it's a lot of time in front of a computer, so her eyes are probably a little tired after
my
these
2020 vision
right.
will go.
So what do you think that you accomplished or learned about yourself in addition to the technical skills that you learned?
I think I definitely learned about myself as a student in this. I think coming into this, I told you and myself that I'm an audio learner, so I hear things and that's how I remember information. But really getting to work on these videos, it kind of exposed me to a different way of learning that maybe I wasn't fully aware of that I was liking or that could really benefit in terms of using images and different sequences to help with memory recall and those kinds of things. And I think definitely a collaboration when you would write a script and then it's okay, we'll edit and put in the videos was kind of like putting myself in the professor's shoes and like, how are we teaching this material and how do we want this information to be presented in a way that's, you know, objective as well as earnest and honest. And I think that was the best part of it. And really just kind of being always aware of how we're presenting this information, especially since it's public now and it's, you know, anyone can see this.
Right, including you.
Yep. So Professor Qualls, why did you want a student collaborator on this project, and what made me a successful candidate?
Yeah, so there's a lot of reasons why I wanted and needed a collaborator. One is just the time, right? As I said, she's doing 320 hours. I probably did a little bit less than that because I have other things that I need to be doing during the summer as well. I could not have gotten more than probably 2 or 3 done. And I would have had nobody behind the camera at all, seeing how goofy I looked. So that was one. It's just the help in the time. But I like working with students in the summers, in particular, to help professionalize students, right? To give them skills that they're going to be using at some point. And our students, our history students, or our history and sociology students, like Aleks, they're in a digital world. They're going to be producing things digitally, and so I think this gives them a leg up as they apply to graduate school, professional school, their first jobs. And so these are really important parts of that. And Aleks, too, in addition to doing all the technical parts, she wrote the vast majority of two of the scripts. The script on Marxism, because she'd already had some contact with Marxism in one of her sociology classes, and then the Romanticism script, the last one we shot, which was pretty new to her.
Yeah.
And so she's doing a lot of work in the library, and so it was another chance of giving her a chance of writing and researching things that she already gets plenty of practice with in the department, but to keep those skills up. But also learn how to communicate those in a different way. As she mentioned, writing a script for one of these videos is very different from writing a paper for a seminar,
Absolutely.
right? Or writing an article as a professional historian. It's a very different genre, very different medium, and so you have to approach it differently. And so I wanted her to have some of that experience. Why you? I chose Aleks. I had a lot of really good candidates, all history majors. Aleks stood out because, one, I'd already seen her in action a lot. She's a member of the Clark Forum for Contemporary Issues. So I have seen her in a very public role, introducing speakers, seen some of the materials she's created graphically. So I knew she could do some of the work that I wanted. I also knew that she had a professionalism that comes with working at the Clark Forum. She's also a tour guide, right? So I knew she was dependable. She could show up on time. And frankly, that's half the battle working with students. I'm usually quite demanding. I ask you to be here at a particular time. You need to be there at that time. You need to do what we discussed. So I knew she had that. And then in discussing with you, found out she already had some experience with iMovie, and learned in watching her after I'd hired her that she could learn very quickly, and that's why we moved to Final Cut Pro. It's a more robust software that she was able to catch on to quite quickly because she already had a foundation.
Right.
Some of the students I was looking at had less of a familiarity with iMovie, some with InDesign, or actually none with InDesign, I don't think. Some with what's the other one I just mentioned?
Final Cut Pro.
No, nobody had
Photoshop.
Final Cut Pro. Photoshop, thank you. Some with Photoshop, but not as much. And so I knew that you'd be able to hit the ground running earlier and faster than some of the other students. And so that was really, really important to me because we only have 8 weeks to work together. And we were able to accomplish quite a bit. So can you tell our viewers about the student-faculty collaboration and how it was beneficial to you as a student?
Well, I think this has definitely been one of the best summers out there because of the student collaboration project, in terms of getting to work with a professor in a, like you said, in a professional environment, and really getting to share ideas, and kind of, really getting that one-on-one attention on the material we're using, and seeing how, how is this going to work in classrooms, and really getting the perspective of me as a student when making these videos, and you as a professor when kind of trying to introduce this really new media to teaching. And I think it's been wonderful in terms of, like you said, professional development, personal development, as well as kind of everything from technical skills to soft skills, and really just learning a lot too. Like you mentioned, some of these topics I've done very little work on, and kind of getting to be one of the students learning from these videos as well as making them. That's going to go miles for me. And for you, I guess, what is the beneficial as a student-teacher collaboration?
Well, for me, it's really important because, I don't want to put in all these hours making all these videos to have students not respond to them.
Yeah.
Right. So one of the great things about working with Aleks is having a student there as we're making it, from script to video, saying, can we do it this way? It might make better sense if we do this versus that. And she was a little hesitant at the beginning to say, "Okay, Carl, this isn't the best way to approach this." But But then I ended up, after the first couple of videos, really trusting her feel for putting the videos together and editing. And what normally we would do is we'd shoot the video, we'd select the images, and I'd throw her into the editing booth and say, okay, draft this.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd come back and we'd look over it for maybe 25, 30 minutes. I have a few suggestions. We bounce some ideas off each other and then give it back to her and say, right, when you're done, just render it.
Mm-hmm.
And watching students grow, I think for most professors will say this, watching students grow over a period of time is really gratifying.
Mm-hmm.
As any kind of a teacher, right? You want to see that something you're doing with them is helping them to improve, to become more confident. And you can definitely see that as you went along in the semester, you got more of that. And so that's really gratifying for a professor. All right, so one of the things we're supposed to tell the college in this report, and this is a report, if you will, for the college, but also hopefully for other viewers, is what's the benefit of this, right? So what's the benefit to our curriculum and department, to the college, to the wider community, right, out there on YouTube now that might be watching these? How do you think we've done that?
I think we've done something that usually as history majors and as a department, you think it's they study the past, it's a dying field, and I think we've really put it in the present, and we put it in your face, and this is how we're going to take history to the next level almost, and use it in the classroom. I think, especially when you came with this idea, I thought it was brilliant, because the worst thing in a classroom is when no one's talking, because no one's done the reading, or a lot of people don't understand it. Whereas I hope with these video projects, hopefully students will watch them, and then maybe they won't agree with certain things, or maybe something in the video will spark their attention, like, hey, why did they use this image, or maybe that was inaccurate, or something like that, to kind of really spark those discussions that I think is where the magic happens in Dickinson classrooms. And that's how then when you lecture, students will start to connect the dots and see the bigger picture, instead of trying to piece together and maybe get some of the information, maybe not. So I think it's great in the classroom for the department, and then the fact that these are public and online, I think that's amazing, because anyone who has access to the internet can just search it in the search engine and it'll pop up and they can watch them. And I think that's important, to not have education in an ivory tower, but to have it widespread to everyone.
Absolutely. And I've become more and more committed to open source scholarship, and so this is kind of, for me, open source teaching in a way. A number of years ago, our college archivist and some of the librarians put together a site called Dickinson Scholar, where we as professional scholars can publish the stuff that we're going to have in books and articles in an open source forum. And I look at the analytics periodically, and I see that some of my highest readerships are in places like South Africa, right? And of course, Russia. There's a fair readership for some of my stuff, and U.S. and U.K. But people from all around the world. Actually, India, I think, is my number 2 after the United States for reading my articles, and that just gives me a sense of how broadly you can get into people's living rooms and offices and help with their development as thinkers. So I thought, well, what if we could do this with teaching too?
Yeah.
And so my hope is that eventually this will reach a broader audience and will spark some of those questions, comments, discussions that Aleks was talking about. Giving us feedback and saying, did you ever think about doing a video on this? Or, why did you say that?
Yeah.
That's really magical when you get people to think and you've never even met them before. So hopefully we can do some of that. And we'll know shortly. So I want to just conclude to say that I hope that answered some of the questions that the college might have about, what were we doing these 8 weeks that you paid us for?
Yep.
But also our viewers. And I want everybody to know that we're going to continue to blog in the fall. Aleks is going to be off campus, but I'll be doing that. She's already given me some ideas. Throughout the fall, you can follow my teaching blog, blogs.dickinson.edu, teaching history. The YouTube channel, of course, which we'll put up on the screen here at the bottom for you to follow as well. And be in touch. Leave us comments. I'll read those periodically, and hopefully we can fine-tune what we've done in future summers based on some of the comments that you might have. So thank you.
Yep.
And thank you, Aleks. You're a great benefit this year.
Thank you. This
All right.
has been a great experience.
Bye.
Bye.